Channel 6 is on.
Okay. Do we know what the delay with Channel 6 is? Should we just hold for a moment, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have more cookie.
Recording in progress.
There we go.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
We're good. All right, we're going to continue on. Excuse me. Now's the time for public comment. You'll have 3 minutes to leave comment on anything that is not on our agenda. Anybody who would like to offer public comment, please step up to the podium and state your name if you would like to for the record.
Good evening, Truckee Tahoe Airport Board and staff. My name is Melissa Moeller. Many refer to me as Missy. I'm Executive Director of Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships, or SWEP. And I'm here this evening to thank you for our years and years of partnership, but particularly for the last 4 years in the community partnership, for the progress we made and the difference we made. I know not all of you get to read what I write in the reports or in the requests, so I just wanted to give you some of the stats that really impressed me. But basically what you helped with was for us to help the school district and the students with methane reduction. And really what it was about at SWEP, our mission is to promote stewardship by connecting students to the local community and the environment. And what I reached out to you all about was my interest in helping the school district and the students to adhere to some of what the state's requiring and the county is requiring to, for all of the bigger businesses that are producing a lot of food, and the state's goal to reduce our greenhouse gases. They're having everybody separate organic waste from landfill waste. But the schools had no way to really teach the kids about this. They just had to make the changes, and it required a lot of equipment, a lot of time. The principals, the teachers were all worried about the flow in the cafeteria. So what we did, I have this motto, I call it Action Fosters Hope. We talked about climate change and how scary that is, and what kids could do on an individual basis to make a difference. And so we taught them about the importance of this separation. We taught them about through science experiments, and we showed them how to do it. We empowered them to be a part of it. They did the math, the monitoring, the data on all the progress we made, and this is what I want to blow you all away with, okay? Are you ready? Together, we diverted 13,000 pounds of organic waste every year. But this is where it gets really exciting. That translates to 572 metric tons of methane and 16,006 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions avoided over the next 50 years. So that's a tremendous impact that we've had. That's every year it gave us 16,000 metric tons for the next 50 years. And that's because that food would continue to rot under the landfill. So I'm super grateful. The kids are empowered, and I want to thank you for that. I also just want to quickly give you a few other stats of what we've done at SWEP. We have recently cleared 184 cubic yards of flammable material, defensible space material. We have another program where we teach the kids and help empower them through the scary subject of fire and career pathways. Am I up?
You can finish.
Okay,
Yeah.
really quickly. 184 cubic yards of defensible space, 102 days outdoors with field work, and 23,979 student contacts with STEAM-related education. So thank you for helping us with that. And I also met with Jeff recently and gave him some more information and a booklet, and I gave him just copies for all of you to look at. Thank you.
Missy. Anybody else for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and go to the consent agenda. Anybody from the board like to pull any items from consent? No. Anyone from staff? Anyone from the public? Okay. Do I have a
President
motion?
Diamond,
Yeah.
this one does include the, excuse me, the annual COLA adjustment for employees. And under the Brown Act, we're required to make a verbal announcement of that prior to it being voted on by the board. So I'm just making that announcement now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that announcement. Do we have a motion for consent? Oh, we don't need a motion. Okay, never mind, forget that.
Would request a motion just to at least approve the COLA adjustment.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda action items, including the approval of the annual employee COLA.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, we have to do roll call because we have to do roll call, please.
Director Horvath,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes?
and Director Diamond.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to action. 2025 LAFCO alternate special district member call for nominations. Rob, do you want me to just speak on this, or did you want to speak on this?
I don't have anything further to add. I think the information's in there. There is an open position, and they are calling for nominations. There's some recommendations in there.
Okay, but I've spoken to some people, spoken to Scott Wilson, who is currently serving as the board president for the sanitation agency. He is interested in doing this, and he comes recommended from Sarah Coolidge, a number of other people. He's a resident over at the North Shore. I've met with Scott. He's a great guy, and I feel like we should nominate Scott. But open for suggestions.
I'm game. I'll let him.
Yeah.
Not game.
I'm good with that. That's fine.
We need the
Public comment.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? No public comment. Do we have a motion?
I move that we nominate Scott Wilson as an alternate seat on LAFCO.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Horvath,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes?
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 7, the Apron A2 installment purchase contract financing.
The board has a series of documents supporting attachments in the staff report. We're asking that the board consider the approval and award of a installment purchase contract for $5.6 million to fund the reconstruction Apron A2. We do have our consultant from Oppenheimer online. Eric, do you have anything additional you'd like to add to that?
No, I don't. That's correct.
Thank you. And just questions from the board?
I had a question.
Teresa?
Yeah, I had a question, and this might have been spelled out when we got the grid, but district special counsel fee of $30,000, what is that?
There is a separate specialized counsel that we are using for this installment purchase agreement than our normal BBK counsel.
I'm assuming all of these were in the spreadsheet that we had initially? Okay.
They were
then I'm good.
included in the fees you saw.
Okay, I'm good then.
Mary, any clarifying questions? Kat, and Greg, any clarifying questions? Was that a no?
That was a no.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-05 of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District approving a conveyance agreement and an installment purchase contract, making certain determinations relating thereto, and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, and to waive the reading.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Horvath,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Heatherington,
Yes.
and Director Diamond.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 8, Truckee Tahoe Airport Strategic Initiatives. Rob, do you want to take this?
Yes, sir, I'll take this one too. In the staff report, you have a series of identifications of our strategic plan goals that are related to this topic. The board, in our previous discussion at the strategic plan level this past month, and individual directors asked to bring this topic on to the agenda for discussion. And so I try to put some background material together related to both STEAM education, which was presented this last month by the Director of Aviation, and also background information on the air show, which I see as a component of our overall STEAM education program here. There's some information on the cost of the past iterations of the air show, attendance levels, different methodologies of hosting air shows in the region, different air shows that take place, air show management companies that run air shows, the construct of how the Truckee Tahoe Airport air show has been run in the past, and then a series of questions that I thought might be helpful to get feedback on from the board of directors. So with that as a setup, I'll stop there and see those questions. Our air show director, Mr. Day Love, Colonel Love, is here also to talk about the air show as well. And we've attached to the budget from this previous iteration of the air show in here as a starting place for that discussion.
All right. Mr. Love, do you want to give us your presentation?
Sure. Thank you, sir. Two things. To put on the air show and family festival, and I like to re-emphasize, we're not an air show. We're a family festival, and we have some airplanes as a part of it, which is really different than what happens in Sacramento and happens at Vegas and big air shows. It's always been a component of the day, and that I think is really important to re-emphasize. So you've been there, so you know how much is going on the ground all over the place. It takes 1 year to really put this thing together. I was on the phone today to our air boss, Gail Rouser, and Gail says, what do you know? Because he starts booking now next summer. I've had 4 of the people who've flown for us ask about that. Our announcer asked about that. So I'm really here with 2 things. I want to make a little pitch, obviously, because we're highly invested in the event, because it's something that we really enjoy providing to the community and enjoy being involved in. But also want to emphasize that I'm asking the board to look at this fairly quickly, because we either need to know we're going to go ahead. We have 200 volunteers that need to change their life schedules next summer. We'd like to do it the same weekend, because the last 2 times we've done that, 3rd weekend in June, it's been really good. Weather was good. We weren't dealing with the 4th of July, because this airport has a little bit of traffic coming in and out the closer you get to the 4th of July. So we like that it's out of the potential fire and smoke season. Who knows when that is anymore, but that's really valuable for us. You have to remember, this is a 200-person event, plus all the great support that we get from the airport district staff. And Rob and his team know that, we have a week or 2 of a lot of stuff going on to make this large event take place. So this is sort of our vision as a committee, and I'm the chairman. I've actually, when they asked me to help coordinate, I said, I'm the chairman, you're the team that makes this whole thing work. I'm happy to help coordinate pieces and sort of represent you as needed in selected events. So I think that's really important. We view it this way. We view it that we think this airport is extremely important to the community, to the area, to all of the things that it provides. But you will never stop having a problem with a community educating them about what you really do and why this is important, because we fly airplanes and we make noise. And that'll never go away, at least in my lifetime of aviation and yours. And so you have a PR problem. It doesn't have to be a problem, but it's a responsibility. And I think every event that provides that. I hate the fact that there are big fences around this place, because when I was a kid, I actually washed airplanes, went out to the airport. My family didn't have any money. The only plane I got to fly was some guy was nice enough to say, yeah, why don't you wash my airplane, come out tomorrow morning, and I'll take you for a hop. We did that. Can't do that anymore. It's restricted. So there's only a couple times a year where people show up in this airport, and other than the terminal building, know what it's all about. So our goal when we designed that day was to say, let's display to the community what we do. So sitting up in this area over here are CAL FIRE and CHP and CareFlight and all of those great things that need and use this airport to protect this community and serve this community. You are basically the venue that makes that work. With an airport sitting here, those services would be flying out of someplace else to serve this community. I think that's really important. If you've ever seen the line of kids out there being able to go over and talk to the CHP officer and look at the helicopter and look at their airplane and talk to the CAL FIRE, that to me, when you think about STEM, that's hands-on STEM activity. It's the only way we can do it is to have a day where we can actually bring all that stuff, sit it on the ramp, ask the community to come out. You know that in the past we've had times in which we asked the community. We've had petitions, we've had articles in the newspaper. We said, do you like the air show? Do you think it's a good thing? You all know what the answers were. They like it. So, you know, we'll always have a few people that flying over their houses is not their happy camper day, but we have a total number of people who think this is a good day. We like doing it. I know you have a decision to make. I've read the great stuff that's in the packet, talked to Rob many times. I think this is a way to educate the community. I don't know how else to do it, but to invite them out, spend time with them. I spoke in the last 4 or 5 years, I think, to almost every service club in the basin about the air show and what we do, and why don't you come on out. That's part of my role, is to go out and engage the community. I cannot believe it yet when I go out to community groups and say, you got to come out to the air show. Oh, are you from Reno, from the air races? I said, no, Truckee Airport. We have an air show at the Truckee Airport? And I can tell you, I will not ever do a presentation without having somebody literally say that to me. So it's an ongoing education process. I like it. I enjoy doing it. I think it's really valuable for you as a district. I think it's valuable for the community. The other piece for me is that my real job is I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I run a large agency that treats about 10,000 kids a year in the Central Valley for child abuse, mental health related issues. I can tell you my kids and my families don't have the money to go someplace. They barely have money sometimes to put food on the table and pay their rent. We have a lot of people in this basin that don't make $10 million a year. We have a lot of people that make this basin work, and they work in our industries, in our hotels and all this. This is the day they can pick their kids up, go to the airport, have a little bit of money for ice cream and a hot dog, not have to pay for parking, not have to pay for a day. They can't afford to go to Sacramento to the air show. I can barely afford anymore. Reno Air Races are gone. So I think the decision is, does a very elaborate day, there's a lot of planning, 1 year's worth, 200 volunteers working for the year to do it, achieve the goal of what one of the goals of this district, STEM-related stuff, education of the community, letting people know who you are, what we do here, why it's so valuable, those kind of issues. You've walked the ramp. We've invited a lot of folks in that are important. The Tuskegee Airmen show up every year. And I served under a Tuskegee Airman when I was in the Air Force, 4-star general eventually, Chappie James. They have his book over there, stories about these things. It is an educational event, realizing it's one day a year. The question is the magnitude of it, the complexity of it, the sort of variedness of this day worth it? We who do it. There's one other piece to mention, though. This isn't a one-day impact. The three nonprofits who have kind of been the core. We had 8 nonprofits last year, the time we did it, doing some role with us. Some picked up garbage, some helped us with parking, some did other things. But the 3 core folks, by decision made by this board a number of years ago, for their year's worth of work, each end up with $22,000 for that year's work. What do they do with it? So Optimists give kids scholarships and send them off to programs. You help fund the museum over at the Kids Zone with that money. EAA, we send kids till they can get their pilot's license. We send kids to the great program at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And we merged now, for the most part, with Civil Air Patrol, so we've got this really cluster of things. Some of you have come on Saturday where we have Civil Air Patrol and EAA and Young Eagles flights. So it's just not give the kid a ride anymore. I've flown 300 kids in my airplane. That's a cool one-time off, but this is not a one-time off. So I think that's important. My one personal story, I had a young lady fly with me 25 years ago in my airplane on a Young Eagles flight. And I said, what do you want to do? She says, I want to be a naval aviator. And she was a junior in high school. And I said, I think that possibility exists. And that was not that common 25 years ago. And she says, well, I got to get to college. And I said, why don't you go to Annapolis? Well, can I go to Annapolis? I said, what are your grades? Straight A. What do you do? Oh, I play soccer and I play in the band and I'm in the debate club. I said, your eyes pretty good? Yeah. I said, why don't you try it? Long story short, she got accepted at Annapolis, and the day she qualified as a carrier pilot, she sent me, thank you very much for the ride. I'm now on my own ride. So the impact of what we do, whether it's my story of one young lady, or whether it's how we create knowledge and information, and I'm sorry, some of you, I've been a university professor on and off, standing in front of talking to people just doesn't hack it. Hands-on, being there, immersed in an experience that's really interesting and exciting and fun. That's what education is all about to me. So I'm here, I'm blatantly, straight up, making a pitch that I think what we do with the Family Festival and Air Show has great value. You have to decide how it fits in your matrix of how you want to go forward. I'm sort of here blatantly and straight up as an advocate. Any questions I can answer now? I'll hang out as you go through this. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you have. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Do we have any other presentations?
That's all the presentations we had. I think some of the, thank you, Dave. I think some of the fundamental questions that I've heard from the board that I try to summarize in the staff report, and certainly I've heard from a lot of the folks that participate in the committee organizing this. Of course, we're not having an air show this year because we have major construction work underway, the apron A2. But it does give us a chance to reflect on the air show, the impact of the air show, the cost of the air show, The board continues to challenge staff with developing year-round STEAM education programs. We had a presentation on that this last month. And we're trying to find the right balance of where we put our limited resources in the way of dollars, time, energy, towards achieving where the board thinks we should be on these programs. I think the robust discussion we had this last month that Jeff, our Director of Aviation, led us on was that we're making a concerted effort now to invest across the continuum of STEAM education in a year-round program. We're investing and we're looking to bring on a new facility, a temporary facility, to help support those Civil Air Patrol, the EAA, in a new configuration that has more access on the land side and the air side, as opposed to the older building that's across all of our hangars here. The spectrum of kids that those year-round programs address and our target audience is pretty significant, and there's a lot of opportunity to continue to grow those, working with the school districts and a number of nonprofits on a year-round basis. The aspect of the air show itself and Family Festival is a one-day event, essentially. There's a lot of effort that goes into that and a lot of cost. And it's really, do we want to spend the time and energy as an important component of what we do here as an airport district for the members of the district? Or do we want to put our time and energy around longer lasting year-round programs that address perhaps a wider variety of youth that we're trying to build programs around, beyond the work that we also do around funding scholarships with the Community Foundation, around STEAM education, working with other nonprofits. So we're crossing a number of different sectors on this and trying to find where this fits into that perhaps new paradigm or shift in priorities is, welcome discussion and directions and additional feedback we can provide on this.
Okay, let's start with clarifying questions. Teresa, do you have anything?
I'm going to go last.
Okay, Greg, do you have anything?
No clarifying questions at the moment.
Kat? Mary?
No clarifying questions.
Do we have any public comment?
Hi, my name is Ken Aronson, and I am the former commander for the Civil Air Patrol. I am their current aerospace education officer for the Truckee Civil Air Patrol. On behalf of the Civil Air Patrol, I want to thank you, the board, and your staff for your continued support for our program while we continue to do our 3 missions that help our community: emergency services, cadet programs, and aerospace education. I support having an air show for one main reason. It allows us to show off to our community who we are and what we do. We're a group of volunteers dedicated to our community. We want to show off our shiny, brand new airplane, red, white, and blue, so when someone sees it flying overhead, they know we may be on a mission to save someone's life, search and rescue. We also want to show off our cadets. At the air show, they get to walk the ramp, work the ramp, and mingle with the community. We have about 20 cadets, 15 to 20. They are proud, they're proper, and professional. They're tomorrow's leaders today. We get to have hands-on STEAM activities, STEM activities for community youth who cannot come to our Mission to Mars Space Camp. We sell out every summer. This gives them an opportunity to use the flight simulators, to do some hands-on activities about flight. They get to make things. They get to be engaged in STEM at this event. It's a huge benefit for them. It's a huge benefit for us. I know the air show is a lot of work for everyone. We at the Civil Air Patrol are willing to put in what the extra work we need to do to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Do we have other public comment? We have other public comment.
I'll come up again. I'm Missy Moeller, and as I said before, we had 29,979 contacts with students this year. That was with 20 programs in our nonprofit, but all around STEAM. And when I say STEAM, I mean science, technology, engineering, environmental art, and mathematics. So it's STEAM. But that being said, I've done the air show as a partner for many years. It's a lot of fun. It attracts a lot of people. It's pretty hot for the long day too, but I can see the benefits to it. But in running events, I also understand, the cost. So I'm just giving both. I've experienced that, and I do annual, year-long STEAM education. So there's benefits to both.
Thank you, Missy. Any more public comment?
Hello, I'm Curtis Crooks. I'm a tenant here with the hangar and also a pilot. And my wife served on the board, and at that time this building was approved, and when she was on the board we bought the golf course. So I've seen a lot go on during that period of time. But I know at that time that the community was surveyed, and it was pretty overwhelming. The people were talked to that they really appreciated and wanted the air shows to start again. At that time, we had taken a break. We didn't have the air shows. But the cold calls that I made when she was campaigning, I would have people on the phone, and a lot of time the question was, what about the air shows? I used to come to the air shows. What happened? And I said, well, we'll see what we can do. At that time, my wife hadn't been elected. But I do know that there is a big demand and a lot of interest in the air shows to continue. So I'm hoping, and I'm a EAA member, and I see here that almost 90% of the folks attending tonight are EAA members, and we're ready to do our normal volunteer service to make that happen. So appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Curtis. Any other?
Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I've been involved with the air show and the STEAM program for quite a few years now. My specialty is high-powered amateur rocketry, and the airport has been exemplary in supporting it. And everybody I know who has experienced the air show in the community, neighbors, friends, they say it's one of the high points of their summer activities. And I really appreciate the support, and I really encourage the board to look at this, and hopefully we can continue with it. It's a huge event. It's very positive, and it's been said before from other individuals. It gets people out here, and they get to see what's really going on here. And the airplanes are important. It's a small part, but it's getting the people here and showing them what's really going on in all kinds of varied activities here. And I think it's really awesome that the airport has supported this over the years, and I certainly encourage them to continue to do so in the future. And thanks to everybody here at the airport. They've been wonderful. So I appreciate it, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Lee. We have any other public comment?
Well, hi everybody. I'm Pat McDonough. I'm a member, former commander of CAP in the EAA. I'm a secretary there. I also do the Naval Academy. I'm the Blue and Gold officer for the Lake Tahoe area, up to the Oregon border. And I'll tell you, when we have college night at the high school, and they come to our table, and they talk about flying aircraft, how can they get into the Air Force Academy or the Naval Academy or the other academies, because I know them all. And they all talk about the air show and what they have seen here at the air show. And they want aviation as a career. And to me, it's very important. I volunteer with Ken on his mission to Mars and that. And it's a wonderful thing just seeing these kids, and it's a great program. I think the airport gives back to the community totally. It's probably the biggest event in the Truckee, Tahoe City Kings Beach area that gives back to the community. And the price is right for the community to come, and they have a lot of fun, and they learn all about aviation. And I really, I'm on the air show committee too. And the thing is we appreciate everything that the airport has done in fostering the education and of our youth. And just want to thank you all for the past, and hopefully we'll continue on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any other public comment? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment, open up board deliberations. Kat, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Since you'll say you want to go last.
I love the air show. I also love that we're developing these potentially year-round STEAM opportunities. And I think Jeff is doing a great job pulling in tons of people in Nevada County and, educators and nonprofits. And I think that's all very exciting. I will say, we talk about this sometimes about where to invest our money. And we're sort of in the nascent phase of fleshing out this STEAM program.
You're done.
Are you cutting me off?
Sorry, that was for the previous public comment. My apologies.
Yeah. And I still think, I think it has a great potential, but it's also very new. And which is why we haven't talked about anything like having a permanent building. It's kind of like, well, let's get started and see who shows up. And so I think that's kind of the phase where we are with that program. I think we have proven time and time and time and time again that when we have the air show, everybody shows up. And I think it's extremely unique to this area. The fact that it's free, the parking is free, that there's so much to do. It's a wonderful community event. I've volunteered a couple times. It's so fun to be in that volunteer group because everybody's so joyful and dedicated. And it just feels to me, I love that it's in June before the hordes arrive on the 4th. And it just feels like a Truckee event to me. So I feel like I would like to see it continue. And I understand that there may be some things that we need to tweak moving forward, but I do think we should move forward with it.
What do you think? What are you thinking of things to tweak? I mean, do you have something in mind, or you just leave it general?
Well, I think, with all due respect to this wonderful group that has put it together for so many years, none of us is getting any younger.
True that.
And there's a lot of institutional knowledge that I think there's a lot of value to getting that, as much of that as we possibly can. But I think over time, volunteers drop off or interest or whatever. So I think I could see looking into bringing in a professional to put it on, or something David's brought up a lot, not charging money, but trying to get sponsorships. I mean, I just do think there are some ways that we can do things differently. Mm-hmm. But I think, in general, I think I would like to move forward with it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mary, what more do you have on that, Mary?
I guess, I'm looking at the, $250 is the budget, and then staff puts in $100,000 worth of labor on top of that, and wondering if we were to contract with a managerial company, because staff is also trying to run an airfield, and that's not time they're running an airfield, and that kind of bothers me, and the idea of a managerial. And it also, the Children's Museum has my blood in it, but I also, which became the Kids Zone, but it's also like it's always been the same entities, and should it RFP out to other volunteer organizations as well, which under a manager, if there was a managerial oversight, they would need volunteers, and they could reach out to different groups. Another thing is the liability, which we're going to talk about in tab 11C in terms of waivers, don't mean anything. And we have had instances where someone fell down and then we ended up paying them a fair chunk of change out of public dollars. And so that concerns me with liability. Another thing is I pulled out the greenhouse gas analysis done in September of 21, and there's a net emissions from the air show for a one-day event of 32, it's equivalent to 32 passenger vehicles driven for 1 year, an extra 150 metric tons of CO2. And I would like kind of the air show to kind of consider that in their analysis. How would they offset 150 of extra tons? And that's including avoided operations of 10 tons would be a typical day, but the air emissions are adding in 161. And that's partially because, you're flying aircraft in from other places. You're adding the smoke from the aircraft. There's a lot of impact, and we're trying so hard to reduce sustainable aviation fuel. So I think that if steam is really part of the idea, it's an acknowledgement of your greenhouse gas impact and what could the air show do to offset that. What responsibility does it have towards that? I remember there was concern about safety. I mean, there are certain neighborhoods close to the airport that have people in those neighborhoods with PTSD. We've had an aircraft go down in Martis Valley Estates. We had one almost go into Olympic Heights. And, the argument is, well, the aircraft fly in a box. But I've been here, and they're out of the box. And that acknowledgement that those neighbors are very nervous, very concerned. And if there are accidents that happen, and it's statistically small, it's 1 or 2%, but what happens if one does have an accident and we have a fire? That is huge. So all in, I mean, I hear that people like it. I also am trying to balance that with a year-round steam we're putting in a trailer. The estimate on that is $100,000. And at San Carlos Airport, they have the Hiller Museum, and I went on and looked at the activities that they offer there, and it's tremendous. And it's more than a one-day event, and you can get kids excited they have events for the 4 to 7, the 7 to 10, and we've talked about that for these different age groups. And a one-day event, it is hot. I've been out there. You're getting a mix of people. I mean, I just went to the Makerspace show, and they charged for parking. Should we charge for parking? That seems not unreasonable. And that's all questions that come into the management of it. And so I think there's a lot of questions we still need to answer about it. I'd like to have the guy from Hiller come up here and talk to us about STEAM and what could we do on a much broader scale. If we were to do it, I don't think we should be doing it every other year. We could do it on a 3 to 5 or a 5-year on some sort of rotation. But I have a lot of concerns with it. What is this? Yeah, so those are my first thoughts and my first comments.
Greg, what are you thinking?
Good to follow that detailed analysis. I share a lot of Mary's concerns around increased liability, fire risk, noise impact, carbon impact. Those are all very real. And I also support the air show. I mean, it's a pretty great event. It's a great event for town. Like what Kat said, it's a Truckee event. It's my own bias, but I think events like this are really important. So ironically, I think the people who, probably voted for me are probably not the biggest air show attendees. In fact, I spoke with a few who make a point of leaving town the weekend that the air show is typically held. But anything like this has its pros and cons. It's going to have its impacts, and I think the overall impact of the air show outweighs some of the costs. At least that's how I see it at the moment. But I think there's also room for improvement to make progress on some of the issues that Mary outlined. So as a kind of high level temperature check, that's where I stand on it. To touch on some of the points that were in the prompt that we had, I don't really see bringing in a professional management company. I think putting on the show is amazing for a lot of people, as we just heard about. I think that's a sort of a community event in and of itself. And as for should we put it on multi-year cadence, that's a tricky one. It's like you spread out the cost, but you also spread out the positive impacts as well. So, I lean towards if we're going to have it, let's have it every year or frequently every other year. I don't know. I'm not really sure what we're accomplishing by spreading out the impacts, both positive and negative, other than just sort of diffusing impacts very broadly. Simple as that. And then as for delaying to reallocating funds to year-round aviation programs, again, this one's tough. Obviously, year-round impacts are valuable. I know as a kid who went to events, I didn't go to an air show specifically, but went to aircraft carriers, got to sit in planes, got to get inspired through hands-on educational experiences like that. But those moments really stood out to me. I think in events, unique events where there's a lot of people, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of excitement, I think that has a ton of value. So I lean more towards not delaying and reallocating funds towards year-round events, and lean more towards having this event, having the air show. And those are my notes. I'll pass it off there.
Thanks, Greg. Teresa.
I am more in the cat camp. I think, although I do have one suggestion, I've heard a couple times it's a Truckee event.
North Tahoe is what I meant to say.
You're right. But I think there should be concerted effort to make it Tahoe Truckee, Truckee Tahoe, whatever, not just a Truckee thing. Like, okay, Truckee Thursdays, that's a Truckee thing, right? But this, if we're talking district-wide, it needs to be more inclusive. But I do think we should do it. We've always done it. The staff has always managed it. I shouldn't say always. We haven't always done it. But as long as I've been on this board, we've done it. We've been able to afford it. I mean, I don't want to. We have the money. It's not like we don't. And there's a lot of people that go. Now, everybody knows I hate to fly. I never go. It's not my thing, right? I've been once when I was running the first time with a little booth. So it's not really about me, but I do think it's a great community event, and we don't have a lot of those. So, obviously all the other arguments are great, but we all are getting older, so maybe newer volunteers, management company. I'm open to that part of the conversation, but Greg said it, the volunteers come together. That's part of it. That's part of bringing everybody together, is the 90 days ahead of time, putting it all together. So I'm in the camp of I think we should do it. I think we should continue it every year. I think every other year or anything like that, you lose momentum. And I guess that's about it. Do I think we should delay? No. Multi-year? No. Re-envisioned? Offer me something to think about. I guess that's about it. I'm in the yes, we should do it camp.
What did you, when you talked about you think it should be more inclusive of the North Shore, what ideas do you have?
I don't really have any, other than I heard it said a couple times it's a Truckee thing. Well, that starts with us, right? It's a Truckee North Tahoe thing.
I guess maybe to clarify, then I hear you loud and clear on that, Teresa. what I meant to communicate by the use of that word is more, it's a small town event. Exactly which town, obviously, we're closest to Truckee, but like I grew up in San Diego, I grew up in a big city. We didn't have stuff like this that had this real community feel. That's one of the aspects that I love about living here is events like this that have this small town, have this closeness to them. So hear you loud and clear on the Truckee Tahoe aspect of it, and I guess what I was trying to clarify, I was trying to really communicate the smaller town feel, which I think is pretty special.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess I would suggest reaching out to the Parks and Rec of the other special districts or somehow bringing them in and, you know, making it more. I mean, I live at the lake. I don't know anybody that knows when the air show is. And that's on us, really, or on the volunteers, or however it's publicized.
That is something I saw in the docs we looked at earlier. It's both an impressive demographic stat that 51% of attendees reported living within the district, and I'd also love to see that number way high. Yes, it's great that a lot of people from out of town this event is so great that lots of people are willing to make the effort to come up here. And as far as like from an impacts and positive impacts and negative impacts, I think if we can increase the number of people that live in the area and show up, I think that's a worthwhile objective.
Okay. My take on it is with a lot of things that go on that are ongoing, that have been going on for decades or years, or I always look at it from the perspective of if we had to start over again, what would we do? If we had to define the airport district today, would we define it the way that it is across political boundaries like it is, reaching all the way to Tahoe, or would we do it differently? If we had to redefine the tax structure, how would we do that differently? If I look at in the abstract that this board, this district has made a commitment to STEAM education and a concern for that, that primarily affects younger kids. And as they grow, we're talking about educational things, inspiration. Mr. Love talked about that many times, about how inspiring kids to do more on that. And I think we're fairly unanimous on that. If we had no air show and we were trying to come up with ways that we would spend the $300,000+ that the air show costs us, plus the $100,000 that we've allocated to STEAM education, would our first choice be, let's put on an air show to spend 3/4 or more of that budget? My guess is that would not be our first instinct. My guess is our first instinct would be, how could we do year-round STEAM inspirational education for kids, even before we got to a conversation about liability or a conversation about greenhouse gas. The Hiller Aviation Museum that Mary mentioned, I've mentioned this before, it's very inspirational what they do. And they do have a very defined target audience of younger kids. So they are generally trying to inspire that, that demographic in with those things. So on that all said, when I've gone to the air show, I've really enjoyed myself. But I do recognize there's an element of this that is entertainment, that is not STEAM education. Airplanes flying around in the sky is entertainment. When I specifically looked at younger kids during the performances, most of them were not paying attention to what was going around in the sky. They were paying attention to the aircraft they could touch or sit in, or the exhibits on that level. So I wasn't entirely convinced that this was an inspirational STEAM activity. There's no question that it's a very effective entertainment activity for the community. And I think that we succeed on that level. I think for the board, what I would encourage us is, when we look at the allocations of funds for the air show, in recognizing that this is not a $300,000 or $350,000 investment in STEAM. there is some portion of this that is purely entertainment. And that entertainment is not just to kids, it's to adults, and it's not just to people who are in the airport district, it's to the 49% of attendees who identify as being outside the airport district. And by extension of that, because we are using public funds, is it a good use of those public funds? So to wrap this up, I feel like there's no question that it's a popular event. I also feel like we have outgrown the mode in which we do it now. I would like to explore other options for management, especially if they do consider sponsorship that could reduce that expense to us. And in, excuse me, and in reducing that expense, we might have more that we can dedicate to year-round STEAM activities that would be inspirational to kids, right? You know, especially if they can't make it that one day of the year, they miss out on that entire experience. We do have Mission to Mars, which is an example, as Mr. Aronson mentioned, when that sells out over and over again, it makes me wonder, why are we not having a conversation about making the capacity for a program like that greater? We don't seem to ever have that conversation, and so much of the money that we allocate to STEAM goes into this one-day event. So this is where I would fall on this. I do not object to the idea of having it, so long as we do have staff capacity to make that happen. I would like to find out what other management options there are, especially if they do include sponsorship, to see how that impacts the bottom line on this. And if we are truly justifying this through a lens of STEAM education, I would like us to take a closer look at the STEAM programs that we do offer, that we know are so popular that we can't have enough sessions to fill the capacity or the demand for these things. I've mentioned this before in Mission to Mars, that the ROI on this is absolutely ridiculously high because of the impact of this, the benefit that kids are getting out of it, and the fact that it is constantly sold out. And we're not looking at trying to replicate or multiply that success. So this is where I would come from on it. Do we have anything else from the board on any thoughts you've heard from other directors?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should discount the entertainment piece. It's good PR for us. We don't get a lot of that. We get a lot of negativity, a lot of negative feedback about noise and annoyance. And I do think there's STEAM, obviously, but just giving back, just giving them this one day, that, just because you brought it up, the entertainment piece, I'm not discounting that. I think it's valuable in and of itself.
Greg, did you have anything more to add to this?
I mean, I feel like I have a bit of a blind spot here historically where I tend to defer towards data. As I said, right, I share a lot of Mary's concerns. I think about this similarly to you, David. But where I'm trying to land on this is I'm trying to take a temperature check on how do the people in the region feel about the air show. And my non-data sense is that folks want to have an air show. So that greatly informs how I'm thinking about, speaking about, and potentially voting about on this in the future. But I don't have clean data on this. My sense is that people want one, but if we had more data on how folks felt about it, I think that'd be helpful, because this is such a big event.
Well, I think the decision is not just binary. It's not just do we have it or not. The decision is if we do have it, in what capacity do we have it? Do we do it the way that we have always done it, or do we do it in a different way?
I understand that.
So the big question I have for staff on this is not an action item. We're not taking a vote on this, so we're giving direction. Do you feel like you have direction on this, or are there questions you have for us that you'd like more clarification on?
Yeah, I don't know if I have total, it is a discussion item, agreed. This will filter into as we finalize the strategic plan. This will be an element of that for the future. So this guidance coming out of this would be helpful in that document. Certainly in the budget process for identifying funds for this for next year. Of course, the Air Show Committee would like to have funds earlier to begin some planning. I do have some, I guess, structural questions. Most of mine are around how does it actually functionally work. I know how it works in the past. Is that the ideal, contractual relationship? I have a lot of concern about that. But from a higher level, if you look at our mission statement behind me here, I think we talk about reducing noise and impact to the community. I heard some talk around that as far as the directors are concerned, but I don't know if we really nailed it as far as how the air show fits into meeting the mission statement. So I think that needs some clarification from me from a larger perspective and how it fits in the strategic plan. From a functional staff perspective, when I sign contracts with vendors, organizations, other agencies, it's pretty definitive. We define the relationship of who's going to do what and how much it's going to cost, who takes the liability, who takes responsibility. The air show past practice has been I, on behalf of the district, as a general manager, am contracting with an entity that's not really an entity. The Air Show Committee is a committee made up of 3 nonprofits that aren't in the business of running air shows. So it's a little bit of a very odd hybrid contractual relationship I would never personally engage in. But here I am, having it reviewed by legal when I first got here. I think that could be structured much better. And so I am an advocate of, should we go out to request for proposal there are professional management companies that run air shows as a business, to see what that looks like. What is the cost of that? Because they look at it very differently than perhaps it's been done by a group of 3 nonprofits that don't run air shows. They are part of this community. There is a lot of give back at the community. Don't question that at all. But it is a year-long planning effort with 3 nonprofits that don't normally run air shows. And it takes a lot of time and energy to build all the components around what the air show is going to be, which is different when I work with contract professional organizations or other public organizations. You develop a contract and a price, and then there's check-in points along the way, but you're dealing with another organization who does that activity professionally for a living. And so the ongoing relationship and discussions are very different than they are than the meetings we have at the Air Show Committee, which is it's a constant kind of working through details from folks that some have a lot of experience in different aspects of the work they're doing, but their core competency is not running air shows. So I would like to explore that more, to be honest. As far as staff support, time and labor beyond just the meetings, the organizing, the actual weeks ahead, as Dave Love mentioned, just kind of moving stuff around, the logistics of setting the airfield up for an air show. Okay, that is what it is. It's a lot of labor. The behind the scenes, what you don't see, and I didn't fully build into this, is that the airport district, on behalf of the air show, is using our public corporate credit cards to book hotel rooms, to book rental cars, to process all the invoicing for the air show on behalf of the air show. So we're doing all the books for the air show as well, but I don't have a way of validating all those invoices because they're developed by the Air Show Committee. So it really leaves us in a position of scratching our head constantly of, okay, who's that with, for how much, who approved it, who signed off on that? I've got to sign the contract with that person, and then we have to turn over our accounting department to pay those bills. They have no way of verifying some of this stuff. It's from my standpoint, it's a little questionable and not the best practice of how you form a contract relationship with the entity to do services and work. We're still doing a lot of the services and work here on their behalf.
Do you feel that if we were to hire an organization that would do this, that would reduce that workload on staff?
I think we'd absolutely make it part of the contract as they do their own billing and invoicing. And you're right, pursue opportunities for sponsorships. That's not from what I've seen, a core competency of the air show committee, of staff to go out and pursue sponsorships. There have been some good sponsorships. They have got some good money from a couple folks that have been involved, but it's been inconsistent at best over the years.
Okay. In paying attention to what we've heard from the directors, it seems to me that we have 3 directors who are net positive on this. And in answer to your question about the mission statement, I'd like to ask those 3 directors, starting with Teresa, how do you wrap the air show into the mission statement?
I am not prepared to answer that question. I mean, I think being a good neighbor is in there somewhere. I don't know. I think the community loves it, and I think we've done it consistently over the past. The staff has managed it consistently over the past. We've been able to afford it. I'm not opposed to talking about someone else managing it. But like I said earlier, I think the community getting involved is part of the whole positivity of it. Otherwise, it's just someone else coming out. Some other, random from out of town. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I'm not prepared to answer that question other than let's get the other 49% of our community out there.
What do you think, Kat?
I mean, it provides benefit to the entire Truckee Tahoe region, is what I see. I don't know that it needs to fit into the statement specifically, but I mean, I think it's probably the best marketing that we do all year, besides, Mike's Facebook site. I mean, it's huge. People come out here for this. And I think, of course it's a lot of work, but I also think it's just a really feel-good event. And it gets people, I never was interested in go out there with my husband and he'll show me all these airplanes and tell me all the history about it. And I mean, it's just really, it generates a lot of excitement. And I think we're always fighting the bad, next door posts about the noise and, this and that. And this is just something that, nobody ever complained. Well, probably a few people complain about the air show, but for the most part, people love the air show. People who call in a lot of noise complaints. I call in noise complaints and I still love the air show. So
Okay.
I think I don't think it necessarily has to fit this mission statement.
Before I hand it to Greg, I think if we agree that the air show is the best PR we've got, and we've been spending $2 million a year on wildfire mitigation, and that's not known, this is an incredible missed opportunity for us. Because I would think that the wildfire mitigation would be something that would be far more impactful on a community appreciation level than the air show. But Greg, what do you think about, like, you showed support for this. Do you feel that it fits with the mission statement?
I mean, I think it's trying to fit it into the mission statement is a worthwhile exercise, but I don't feel that it really solves our problem, because we're going back to sort of speaking about what our views are as individual directors. I think there are strong statements in support and strong statements against the air show in our mission statement. Reducing the impact on our neighbors and the environment. Mary had some great stats earlier on the carbon impact of the air show. That's not a positive. I think the noise impact from the air show in the preceding days is very high. I think the noise impact of the air show is extremely high. I think the air show, compared to that line, does not fit into it, does not align with the mission statement. At the same time, depending upon how you feel about provide sustained benefit to the entire Truckee Tahoe region, that's what we're sort of debating and discussing here, is what is the positive impact. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise to some degree to map it to the mission statement, but it's entirely dependent upon how you weigh the overall positive impact of the air show. And we're all doing that subjectively. don't have anything to add other than what I said earlier on that. I think you can see it's something that I have mixed feelings about.
Mary, do you have any?
Just,
Final
to
thoughts
sum
on
it up, I think there is enough interest by the board to at least pursue what a management company what that cost might be and what that implication and how much staff time it could save and liability and bookkeeping and all those kind of things to come back to us and let us know that. I think there is a feeling that it's worthwhile to pursue and look into. And to look at their volunteer base, that it should it always be the same three is a question. And that's something that a management company might have some input in. And I would just ask that within the air show, and I'm hearing consensus to do it every year. I think having been a volunteer in a lot of entities, there's sometimes it's nice to do it every other year because people do get tired, and it's like you just wind it up in June, July. Well, it takes almost a month to wind it up, and then you're already starting to plan the next one. So an air show committee might want to consider for them and their volunteers doing it on a biannual basis, because then you're inspired to come back and you get a rest in between. And in terms of the carbon, I do think reaching out to SWEP, having just brought that up, how can you offset some of this carbon? It's a big, this is legitimate, 150 extra metric tons associated with it. And I'd like to see that somehow addressed. That's me.
I think I'll add something when Mary's finished.
Yeah, that captures it for me. I think that looking at, just to summarize again, looking at a management company, looking at who the volunteer basis comes from, liability, if we have a management company that would shell off some of the liability, I would assume. That's important to me. And the greenhouse gas.
Do we, just asking the board in general, do we have consensus to ask staff to come back with or after looking into management company options?
I think that timeliness is important right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that doing research into management companies is going to result in finding one to do it for next year, because I think that takes time. And I'm all in favor of looking into that, but I'm not sure that would result in an air show that's coming together in 2026. So I think, at some point we need to give direction to David and his group whether we're going to have one in 2026, because I'm not sure that all these questions, and I think they're very valid, and I really appreciate the whole billing perspective, because that really illustrates, what some of the challenges that the staff have. But I don't think those can be corrected in a short period of time.
Okay, Teresa?
Yeah, I think we also haven't asked the existing air show committee to take on the billing piece. Could they? Would they? Should they? I agree with the timing piece. If we can look into it, but I don't think this next year that we can do it fast enough. And like I have said already, we've been doing it. Our staff has the capacity to do it. As much as I don't think it's efficient, and we can just push it right back. We can just write them a check and they deal with it.
Didn't we do that before?
I don't-
Isn't there a reason why we do it the way we do it now?
I'm not familiar with it being done a different way.
Has it always been done this way, Kelly, since you've been here? Okay.
Okay, Mary or Greg, do you have any input on asking for management or not? And because I think where we're at is if we don't ask for that, what we're asking for is to come back with an action item with a budget from the existing committee for an air show next year at our next board meeting.
Yeah, and I don't
And then
think we
just
need
taking
to
a vote
do a
on it.
lot of research on management companies. I think I've done that. I've identified the ones that operate in this region. We could go out with an RFP and ask everybody to submit their bids on a defined set of terms that we can evaluate against each other for doing an air show next year. That way we have some true comparison of what we know the cost has been and what, you know, how it can be differently. We've never really explored that. We still do that on a time frame for next year.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think also to add, it's a big fundraiser for these groups. And they've been doing it for a long time. They're almost professionals at it. You know what I mean? It's part of their process. It's not news every year that they're going to do it. I'm not saying they're the most efficient or that we shouldn't look at alternatives, but it's a significant fundraiser for them.
So maybe we could, the RFP process, we wouldn't be able to conclude that before our meeting in July. Is that true?
It'd probably be August meeting at the earliest. Give
Okay.
appropriate amount of time and contact.
Okay. Would it be reasonable to ask for, in the July meeting, if the board would agree to this, that we at the very least ask the existing air show committee to come back with options for how they could reduce the impact on our staff in terms of taking over the billing and taking over all of those obligations?
I would defer to the air show committee.
Mr. Love, would you like to speak to us?
Yes. Rob's point is the key point. We have 3 nonprofits who get insurance and provide it to the district when we operate it. The district has a bigger umbrella, absolutely need to protect yourselves. We have, from the last 20 years, the airport district basically, it's morphed a little bit, said, we would like an air show. Community groups, would you like to get together and can you put together the key components? The key components are real simple, 200 to 300 volunteers. We aren't an entity to set up banking, bookkeeping, and that. The airport district is an entity. And that's why it's funneled through the fiscal department here. I sign off on everything to say this is legitimate, this is a contract that's valid, no valid contract is forwarded to the district with our reviewing it. I don't think that this volunteer group that I help coordinate is set up to operate as an entity to contract and respond to an RFP to do an air show for you, because we're not. There's 2 ways in which air shows are done in the United States. A professional group does it, or a whole group of community citizens get together and bring their resources, and that's what we have been forever in this air show here. I've helped run other air shows. I work with the largest civilian air show in the world as a volunteer, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Air Adventure. 350,000 people show up. There are 8,000 volunteers. They work like us, though, and they run everything through an entity, National EAA. If you would put out, this is my guess, and I actually talked to our air show boss this morning, Gail Rouser, and I said, how long would it take to get a professional company to look at it, to bid, to be able to possibly run the air show, and do you think they'd be interested in this size of an air show? I mean, they put on the big guys, these professional companies. He said, not for next year. He said, I don't see any way it could really happen. He's my expert. I'm not this expert. He does probably 30 air shows a year. He said, I don't think that's the direction that'll work for you. Certainly can explore it. My answer is, I don't think, I think it basically would say we're not going to have an air show next year. If you want to even explore that, I'm not quite sure it's going to work.
What about National EAA?
No.
Why do you say
They are out
no?
of the air show business now.
Okay, so that point that you just
Yeah,
made is
they
not.
have basically, over the last 3 years, basically handed it out to local community entities, airport districts, community other groups to do it, and they decided, except for the one air show they run in Oshkosh.
Okay.
But I I used to work 3 other air shows that they helped sponsor, and they decided to stop that.
So it sounds to me what you're saying is from the air show committee, the current air show committee's perspective, if we are to choose to do this in 26, it's going to be the same air show that we've had.
I don't
before.
see any other way than replicating what we've done, because with the whole infrastructure's there, everything's there.
All right, thank you.
If you choose to go out to bid, I would think you're basically saying that we probably can't put, there won't be one in Truckee for the next year, and that's just my experience with this and my expertise.
Okay.
I defer to Rob and the group, but that's kind of, I think, how it's going to play for you.
Okay, thanks. So asking the board now, it sounds like what we're asking at this point is in July, do we want to have an action item for choosing to have an air show in 26 with the current air show committee? Am I reading that correctly?
Well, I heard Rob saying that he could get some information, and I would like to see that information.
And he could bring that back in July?
Right.
At the same time, if we have that information.
We could shoot for that. I'm guessing it would take a little longer to get those bids together.
Okay.
So, if there's an action point, if it's in August, then I'm okay with it getting pushed to August. I'm okay with it being pushed to August to make a decision if it takes that long to get a management company.
Yeah. If we did wait till August, I hate to ask you again, Mr. Love, if we waited till August, would you still be able to do an air show?
I can't 100% answer it. My big issue becomes the air show portion of Family Festival's easy because it's community groups.
Right.
But all the professionals that fly airplanes, are announcers, do all those kind of things, they book usually a year in advance. I have 2 people penciled in, shall we call it, and I told them after tonight's meeting I'd give them a little better sense of whether, don't count on us if you get other bids. So I can't answer the question in the affirmative, yes, we can.
Got it.
I could tell you in August, and I got on the phone and started calling people, whether it could come together. So it's not a hard response that I can give you because there's too many unknowns.
Question in terms of, isn't it December when you go to the ICAS meeting in Vegas?
That's where we
and you
look to
book-
fill in
Where you book to fill
we
in,
look to fill in things,
bring
but-
in things.
90% of our acts are hired by August or September each year. Because they all know us and they call us and they say, "You doing an air show or not? Do you have a slot for us?"
Okay.
In ICAS, we do a lot of other stuff that has to do with insurance and vendors and all kinds of other stuff that we do. But most of the acts we book a year, 10 to 12 months in advance.
All right, thanks.
Thank
In
you.
the interest of wrapping this item up, Teresa, do you want to hear it in July with the current committee, or do you want to wait until August to hear whether we have an option for outsourcing?
July would be my first choice. I will
Okay.
do August if we have to.
Kat, where do you stand? Same. Okay. Mary, where do you stand?
I'm in August.
Greg, where do you stand?
Same as Kat and Teresa.
Okay. Can you bring this back to us in July with the current air show committee, if we have any other information at that point in time?
Great. I'll work with the Air Show Committee to provide a presentation on their plan for the air show for 2026.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for that conversation. All right, item number 9, Climate Transformation Alliance update.
I'll just introduce this one. There's a staff report for you. We have the director from the Sierra Business Council, CTA, Kaylee, here as well. We have some of the governing partners here in the audience as well to facilitate additional conversation on this. But the board asked to bring this topic on for discussion to talk about what CTA's been working on, what the near future and the long-term future looks like. I tried to pull in some of the high-level details here to prepare this discussion for you. And certainly we are here to talk about the next steps of the CTA and make sure that we are communicating to the larger group of CTA what this governing partner's interest and direction is for the future.
All right. Kaylee, would you like to speak to us about this? And then Anna and Krista as presenters, if you'd like to speak as well.
Hi, Kaylee Reynolds, work for Sierra Business Council, and on behalf of the governing partners, facilitate and staff CTA, along with a few other staff members at SBC. So I think just to start it off, I will just say for transparency, the governing partners of CTA have not hosted a strategic planning session for 2026 yet. It's on our agenda for next week to set a date for that. We did the last one in February of 2024, and so that was really building out the work plan through the end of this year. And so based on that, I can kind of speak to the accomplishments we've had, some big ones that we've done recently through the end of 2024 and through now. One of the big ones was launching program and communications. Thank you, Anna. And so we did a recruitment process, which we thought was going to be lengthy and awful. And in the meeting that we said, please write your name down if you would like to do this, we filled every slot. So basically it showed huge community buy-in to support the operations of CTA. And then the other one was developing and launching the CTA dashboard and clearinghouse, which are now live on the CTA website, climatetransformationalliance.org. And that basically shows the breakdown of greenhouse gas emissions across the 3 different jurisdictions, Nevada County, unincorporated, the town of Truckee, and unincorporated Placer County, that have the overlapping inventories to show the airport's district's boundaries. Obviously, those inventories are not confined to the airport district, and when we looked into, is it worth doing an inventory within the airport districts, which is the same as CTA's boundary, would be extremely difficult. That's typically not how inventories are done, because it is at typically jurisdictional level boundaries. You get utility emission data and VMT, vehicle mile travel data, and all that. So we're using those. We did a per capita breakdown so people could kind of get an idea of what their kind of personal contribution are to those emissions. And that's all on the website, along with the clearinghouse, which highlights local agency and business and organization policies and different emission reduction measures that they are doing. The intention there being, it's public, people can find this information, and we increase the ability to replicate and scale those initiatives across other agencies in the area. And because those had already been adopted by local agencies, it should be an easier process for other boards to then approve and adopt those initiatives. So ton of staff capacity to get those launched, and those are up, so we are really excited about that. To sort of highlight that, we've just developed a press release from the communications subcommittee. East River PR is helping us get that press release out. We received a ton of really amazing testimonials from members across a range of agencies and organizations on the value that CTA brings to them. So it's been a great kind of start to 2025 of launching these like really big initiatives that took a long time to develop and get to where we are today. And then another sort of big thing that's on our near-term horizon, CTA will be represented at the California Climate Energy Conference. This is an annual conference that happens across the state, brings together all the utilities, all the regional energy networks, a ton of local agencies across the state, organizations. So Anna will be on our panel representing CTA at a statewide conference. That is a pretty competitive process to get approved to speak at that conference, so a huge win for CTA there. That's July 9th and 10th, and then right away we'll be back in Truckee for our CTA member meeting on the 11th in this room, and we have secured 3 really awesome speakers for that. So our kind of keynote for that meeting will be Kate Gordon. If you're not familiar, she's the CEO of California Forward. She worked for the Department of Energy under the Biden administration and was the main architect of the Inflation Reduction Act. So a huge player. She also led the governor's OPR when it was still called OPR, Office of Planning and Research for the state. And so she's just a powerhouse in climate energy policy. And so she'll be speaking to the CTA membership on sort of the future of California climate policy. And then we'll be having Chris Mertens from the California Tahoe Conservancy and Anna from the town's perspective joining Kate in conversation about how these statewide and federal impacts are going to filter down and really impact our region. And that's going to be a really amazing conversation, and also the first time that CTA is really branching in by having Chris Mertens join us from the Conservancy in how CTA's mission of carbon neutrality needs to really capture our natural and working lands. So that's a big part that CTA has not yet touched on. We've really focused on the built environment, so reducing building emissions and transportation emissions. We've done a ton of highlighting of other agencies and policies that are being done in the region, and there's a lot happening, but we know we're never going to be a carbon zero community or state, and the state knows that. 85% reduction in emissions, 15% remaining will be made up in carbon sequestration and storage in natural and working lands. And our region is a huge contributor of natural and working lands. So really it'll be the first time that CTA is kind of moving into this landscape level carbon storage, and will sort of be new for the membership. I think there's a lot of confusion about what carbon neutrality means in general. Nobody understands what that means. So hoping that we can continue to be a platform for education in that front, and bring that on board. So those are some of our near term. We'll also have a member meeting in October, and then through our strategic planning session with the governing partners, I think our next really big challenge for CTA is going to be our finances. We are grant funded right now through June of 2026 through a state grant that SBC wrote. And that did lower our annual operating budget for CTA, but seems doable. So I think now we know our finances can be in check and we can do things on a tighter budget. But I think that's going to be a big part of what do we do, knowing that the state is projecting now a $12 billion deficit for 2026. And so the likelihood of additional grants or funding for climate collaboratives is likely going to be non-existent. We'll see what happens with Prop 4, but probably not something we can bank on again. So we'll need to be creative and figure out different funding mechanisms for how staff for this collaborative will continue to operate. Is there anything you guys want to add from?
My perspective is a little different, and I'm happy to
Yeah,
say a few words.
Krista, come on up.
Well, good evening, directors. It's good to see you all. I confess I don't come to airport meetings very often, so thank you for the work that you do. I super appreciate it. I'm Krista Finn. For those of you that don't know me, I am currently serving as the president of the Truckee Public Utility District's Board of Directors. And I'm going to sort of step back. Sometimes it's easier to see things if you can step back a little bit. And this is a super complex issue that we're talking about. It's incredibly brief history of the Climate Transformation Alliance, which started with a series of conversations between Anna and David and myself on our back decks several years ago. It was an idea. We were all struggling with how we could help our districts and our community rise to the climate crisis. And no mistake, this is a crisis. And we were all individually struggling that. We were all elected representatives. We need to dramatically reduce our carbon dioxide emissions, period. So we created the CTA. That was our answer. We wanted to create a way for us all to help each other reduce our carbon emissions. It was as simple as that. At a minimum, we all need to be in the same room. So we wanted to create some sort of structure that we could help to build the trust that is necessary to tackle such a big problem. We need to understand the pain points and to help each other through them. We need to share our most successful policies and programs, admit our failures, and help others not to repeat those failures and to replicate the positives. Really simple stuff. These are the things that should be happening. Because we all exist already, right? We all serve. So a lot of heavy lifting has already been done. Kaylee pretty succinctly summed up something that was an idea 4 years ago is now playing much more serious ball here. We have a structure, a mission, a name. All of those things took time to create, and that was kind of the ugly, painful part of creating any new entity, which this is. We've been awarded funds. That was a huge victory for something that was new. Members have received funds as well. But now we need to continue to evolve and to grow. The hospital district is new to the conversation. They're in the room now. The school district is new to the conversation. They are in the room now. They have committed themselves. We're not satisfied with this change. We need to do better, right? No one else is going to figure this out for us. It's up to us. This is it. This is who we have. Basically, really the people in this room right now, which is, it's a little disheartening. You know, especially on the tails of the air show conversation. It makes me a little sad. Our lives are on the line at this moment in human history, and you know, we can easily commit $300,000 to an entertainment that exacerbates the problem, but we can't spare $25,000 to help solve the problem on a regional basis. So that, I mean, that just, as I was listening to that past conversation, I was like, oh boy. You know, it's bread and circuses. We like to distract ourselves. It's easy to be entertained. We like it. Who doesn't? We have real, serious challenges in front of us that we have to look our kids in the eye and say, I helped solve this problem, or at least I quit contributing to it, and we may need to make bigger sacrifices than an air show when it's all said and done. That was an aside, and I'm sorry it was I'll reel it back in. But we do need to do better because no one else is going to do it for us. We all need to bring our thoughts, our actions, our creativity, and our courage to the table, and that's what we want the CTA to do. It is a platform for us to share our best ideas, our best actions, our most courageous thoughts. And if I had to compare the CTA to a stage in human development, I would say we're about 5 years old, which we actually are in real time. But you know, the painful birth, the exciting creative idea that we're going to create something, and the growing pains to bring it into existence, the sleepless nights and the temper tantrums are kind of behind us. But now we're still just 5. We don't have a huge attention span. We need some more direction. We need some more inputs. We need some more guidance. But we have a lot of unrealized potential. So, you know, let's make it to 10, because 10-year-olds are quite awesome. And they are very productive and amazing creatures. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. That's my 2 bits.
Thank you, Krista. Anna.
Good evening, directors. Anna Klovstad, Vice Mayor for the town of Truckee, one of the governing partners. Thank you, Katie, for the summary of what we've done and kind of where we're going. And I really appreciate your words, Krista, and the point, the very strong point of we need to be here looking at solutions. And if we're going to talk about offsetting some of our impacts, this is one really great opportunity. What I want to talk about is the connecting of the dots, because to me, that's really where the success of CTA has been. And the funding that we got to pay for the oversight and management from Sierra Business Council is it not only was that great for that purpose, but that grant funded an enormous amount of work that's being happened in the entirety of Nevada County, including the development of their very first climate action plan. And that is huge. That is something that would not have happened if it weren't for the influence and the influence of CTA and the support of SBC. And that is going to impact the entire county, not just the boundary that the airport covers. So our sphere of influence has expanded. Our sphere of influence has expanded in that we, as a partner or as a attendee to the CTA meeting, we got the Tahoe City PUD and the North Tahoe PUD to join as charter members. Their boards recognized they should do a greenhouse gas inventory to be full partners in this process and in this alliance. The California Tahoe Conservancy saw that and said, we're going to fund that for you. So they connected, all these dots got connected, and we are serving the mission of the California Tahoe Conservancy through these greenhouse gas emission inventories for these two agencies that would have otherwise not done this were it not for their invitation into CTA. So again, we've connected the dots. We've expanded our influence. Now we've got South Lake Tahoe talking about developing and starting their own version of CTA, because what we've been able to accomplish and the funding that we've been able to receive and the movement on our policies and programs has been so substantial. This presentation I'm going to be doing in July to the California Climate Energy Conference. Like Kaylee said, I'm going to be speaking to very large audiences, explaining what we've done and what we've accomplished. And the reason I'm invited to do that is because they're so excited about this concept and replicating it in other areas. Again, our sphere of influence is expanding. So these are all just examples of how this tiny little group, supported by these three primary agencies, has really moved the needle in a much broader region, and we should be so proud of that. And I hope that you are, and it's a feather in all of our caps, but more importantly, it shows us that we can really make a difference. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but that really, I think, sums up everything that we wanted to share with you this evening. And thank you so much for your time and your interest in this.
Thanks, Anna. Greg, do you have any questions?
No questions at the time. Thanks all three of you for sharing. Thank you.
Mary, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Kat, do you have any questions? No. Teresa, do you have any questions? I have questions. One of the questions that presumably next year when this grant runs out, we'll be asked to fund CTA. Do we have any idea what we're expecting in terms of a financial ask from us?
I don't think it's been decided yet that the governing partners will definitely be asked. I think it's a great assumption. I appreciate the assumption.
Can you,
oh, sorry.
for the folks at home?
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's a great assumption. I think we are unsure of where it will come from given the state and federal deficits and budget cuts to climate work in general. We have the funding and finance subcommittee now that has been looking at fundraising opportunities. We are under no illusions that we have the startup capital to run a capital campaign to fundraise to staff CTA. So I think there will be questions on, do we want to contribute a portion of our current budget to a fundraising effort? And we'd probably need to ask the state if it's an appropriate use of grant dollars. So I think there's different ways there. There are, a recent partnership we've just made with Alibi in town of, do we host fundraisers there? Are there folks that are going to give us free venues or donate kegs of beer and where we can sell tickets and turn a profit and make any sort of revenue? With the assumption that we are now operating on, we had $165,000 to fund 2 years, coming off a $100,000 a year budget prior when the governing partners were contributing. So I think we know we can operate on about an $80,000 annual budget. And I think there is, what we need to talk about as with the governing partners and as the smaller decision-making body of what does CTA want to do? We've been an educational platform so far and a convener, and that is our mission and what we've been designed to do and what we do. If we want to move into an implementer, that's going to mean we need a lot, millions of dollars, and either CTA does that work, or are we a granting body? Do we act as a foundation? Do we give out funds to start projects? We've had the airport donated funds for when we did the accelerator, and we funded pilot projects. And so there's perhaps different avenues that we could go. I think if we come back and we say, okay, we're going to try an $80,000 annual operating budget, we split that 3 ways, a little over $25K each, and see what happens. But I think it'll be dependent on when we do the strategic planning session. Are we really shooting for the moon, and will we need a much larger budget than that? Versus are we okay with the status quo and we're just going to kind of do our quarterly meetings, get the word out? I think there's various topics that have been discussed. Do we start doing any type of advocacy, and what does that look like? Do we branch into a lobbying arm? There's different avenues that we can go if we don't want to be giving out money or doing on the ground projects. Other ideas of like, do we house rebates that are offered from agencies? Like how like just what is CTA's next platform going to be? I think these are just all decisions the governing partners have to weigh in on, and then we'll base a work plan and a budget off of that.
How many members are in CTA now?
We have 187 individuals that are like on our calendar invite on the mailing list. Of that, there are 28 charter organizations and agencies, and so those folks are bringing typically more than one staff person to that list. I think we have like 68 individuals that are affiliated with those charter member agencies, and then the other ones are either folks that have not signed a charter. We have like the school district is a super active member, comes to all of the meetings, but their board has not approved them signing the charter. And there are certain groups that have been unable to sign the charter because we do have a clause in the charter saying that potentially we could charge member dues, and so people are not okay signing the charter with that in mind. But at this point, there is no real distinction between a charter member or not, other than you've signed it, but there's no membership dues or any other expectation.
Okay, and then my last question is, when in tracking the progress that CTA has made, do we have any indication of what projects or what accomplishments would have happened even if CTA had not been there? With regard to the members and the projects that they're working on? In other words, are we seeing results on greenhouse gas reduction because of CTA, or are we recognizing through CTA what people would have done anyway?
I think there's both. I think there's a level of storytelling and celebration that CTA does of the work that people are already doing. And then I think, to Anna's point, there have been agencies like the PUDs on the lakeside that have made that. There's also been certain folks, like Palisades Resort came to a meeting and shared how they're using renewable diesel and how they've done procurement strategies and developed a blend that works. And then we've had like 3 other CTA members that are now also using their procurement process for renewable diesel in the region. So I think we do have like pretty direct lines of saying this is because of CTA. Like maybe they would have talked to the guys at Palisades anyway and would have done it, but CTA was the catalyst for some of those. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and I would say the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District, Tahoe Forest Hospital, Tahoe City PUD, North Tahoe PUD are all doing greenhouse gas emissions with recommendations of how to lower those emissions based on their attendance to the CTA meetings. Okay. And that is huge because those are, and Tahoe City, Truckee Donner PUD was already doing it. So we don't get to count them as our influence. You guys were already on it. But that is a pretty significant impact in terms of our regional greenhouse gas emissions, because school district and hospital are our 2 biggest employers by far. And then those other utility district and agencies are also very large contributors because they are both sewer conveyors and water purveyors. And water systems in our region tend to be the largest users of our electric water and sewer conveyance, are the largest users of our electric needs.
And also, don't think that we can discount sort of the conversations that happen that are more casual than that. Katya from Sugar Bowl, for example, we've been met through the CTA, have chatted multiple times at the CTA mixers, and she, got some really good ideas and how to forward biomass up at Sugar Bowl. And of course, looking at the North Star project is what sparked that. And then she was like, I'm unsure of how I would approach funding. And we got to talking about, forming a nonprofit. The Sugar Bowl homeowners are a wonderful resource for them up there. And she spoke with them and they came up with some parameters if she could put together a compelling argument that they would consider creating a nonprofit to explore biomass up there. So these are the sorts of, again, little tendrils that will continue to make change. This is mine.
All right, thanks. All right, let's, I'm guessing we have, or do we have any public comment? No public comment on this. Let's open board deliberations. Teresa, what do you think?
Is this an action item?
It is not an item, it's a discussion item.
Yeah, I think they're doing great work.
Okay, Kat,
They're doing great work.
Kat, what are your thoughts?
I'm not sure what we're supposed to be talking about.
We're just discussing what we think as a charter member of the progress of CTA and the value of CTA, and if there's anything more we would like to see from CTA.
Well, it sounds like they're not really sure if they haven't done their strategic plan. I mean, I was on the CTA for 3 years, and I never really understood what we were doing. Because we were doing different things all the time, like the accelerator thing that we did. One of the recipients never started anything. It just feels like CTA doesn't still really know what they're doing. That's kind of, I'm still just kind of confused. I recognize that there's a lot of good things going on, and I appreciate all the examples, but it seems unfocused to me. And so maybe that's the strategic plan will help with that.
Mary, what do you think?
I had two thoughts. One, I appreciated, Krista, your comments. You know, we just spent $350,000 for an air show, which is going to bring in 150 more metric tons. And then I thought, well, all the air show people have left, but there should be a education component at the air show to talk about that impact. Some people call it shaming. I call it education. You know, smoking was prevalent. My parents, my aunts, everybody smoked, and we educated, and eventually there's still people smoking, but in general it's less. And so I'm sorry they've all left, but I would like to see the air show somehow honor their 150 metric tons, and without us paying, without us as the airport district paying that offset. But that education component is that's a huge place where you have an actual number. You can say, this is a great entertainment day, and this is the cost, and we are in a crisis. And I think I heard we have like 2 years or 3 years to stay below 1.5, and then it's ugly. So that's one. Two, on a local level, in our strategic plan under natural resources, I would like us to be more specific in terms of greenhouse gas. I'd like to see something show up in there in terms of, you know, again, this report's 21, it's not the latest N0, but this showed that the Scope 3 landing and takeoff operations are 18 times what our Scope 1 and 2 are. And we've done a lot with sustainable aviation fuel, and we've electrified our stuff. But what are we doing in terms of educating the greenhouse gas component? And I'd like to see that in natural resources, a little more specific as you work on the strategic plan, something to set the example for the N0. Can we get them to do a study for us to tell us how we might offset those carbon issues? Because they do those type of studies. And I'd like to see that in our strat plan with a little more emphasis. I think education works. It takes forever, but I think that if we don't do it with focus, and then it just doesn't happen. So those are my two thoughts.
Greg, what are you thinking as our current rep of CTA?
So share some of Kat's concerns, and I've also had a lot of excitement with being the rep. Climate's been a concern, passion, not sure what the right word of mine is, for a long time. But yeah, it's I think there's sort of a two-pronged issue where my sense is there is so much being done that, and this presentation was probably the most concise display of CTA's accomplishments that I've been able to digest, that I've seen so far, having attended the meetings. And so that's both fantastic, and it does feel somewhat spread out, such that it has been difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around, what the sort of measurable impact often is. And as I said, this presentation has been the most concise display of that yet, so I appreciate that. I do think that a more simplified, more focused mission might be helpful. I think the vision, to reference back to those docs, is super clear, right? Net neutral by 2025. And then I think the mission and acknowledging the sort of intersectionality and the complexity that comes with tackling a problem like this, and interagencies and all the players and stakeholders, and acknowledging all that, I do think a simplified, more focused mission would be very helpful. So I'm excited for what's going to come out of kind of the strategic planning. I think it makes sense from a timing perspective. To Chris's point, I think it was Chris's point, the organization's been around for 5 years. Some of that means experimentation and going out and trying to work on a lot of different things at the same time. But I'm excited to see what comes out of strategic planning, and my hope is that there's some helpful guardrails so that things can be a little more focused.
Thanks, Greg. So my thought, having been in that initial meeting about getting this started, it didn't turn out the way we initially talked about it, and that maybe that's fine. It's actually quite different than the way we had first talked about it. And for a period of time, I did represent us in those meetings, and then invited myself to stop participating because, to be honest, I was getting frustrated because I didn't feel like it was moving forward. I felt like there was a lot of conversation, but not a lot of conversation that was focused on measurable outcomes from that. And I felt that being in the room might be a distraction. So I thought that I should not be involved with this. And then Kat volunteered, or was volunteered, to pick up there. And the reason that I wanted to have this agendized for discussion now is because we are 5 years later. And when I've attended certain meetings, and including like in the upcoming meeting, I do see a lot of discussion, and it's inspirational. It does feel like in this very room, we have a lot of people who are very like-minded about this, and who are very concerned about this and very focused on this. But I still, sharing the perspective of Kat and Greg, I'm still concerned if we don't hone in the focus and get more specific about the tangible results. I see Kaylee is giving me the sign of money. I disagree with you. I think for some things, there's no question that you need money. I think for most things, you need creativity. CTA started because of creativity, of an idea, and I think that you can motivate and you can if affect change through that educational piece. And I don't want to, and I'm fully aware of, because I have removed myself from it, I don't want to be the person coming in here and raining on the parade. I don't want CTA to go away. The reason that I showed concern about this now is because I fear that unless it does become more action-oriented, it might start losing momentum from people who are showing signs of frustration about slow progress. So this is just my take on it. I do appreciate the time Kat, Greg, everybody has put in all of these years. I also would like to see, and Rob's gone. He left. Yeah.
I can't see.
But, and now Matt, who's stepping in there. I feel the same way. It's like I would love to see a more focused, efficient machine in terms of not that we're going to get together and discuss about stuff that we all already agree about, but we're going to get together and start talking about tangible educational ideas from one agency to another of what they could do, or from the CTA to individuals in the Tahoe Truckee region about what we could do as individuals to reduce our impacts. Because I don't believe it's all about agencies. I do believe it's about the people who live in this massive airport district as well. So those are just my thoughts. Krista, it sounds like you've got a...
I do. I want to say, like, the CTA is you. You are 30% of the driving force behind CTA. So if we're not getting wholehearted, full participation in the meetings, in the governing partner meetings, in the development of a strategic plan, in the development of specific actionable items, we're not operating at full capacity. And that's when we have, in this case, when we have doubts or whatever it is, so we would like to say, it's on us, it's on you. Come to us, help us make it better. Show up with your full selves. Give us your concerns and also some of the solutions to those concerns. It can't be all coming up with creative ideas, one person or a handful of people that consistently show up and share their ideas and it's not gonna do it. We need everybody. We need all 128 of those people who show up in this room once every 3 months to actively participate. I don't know how to do that. I could use some inspiration myself. How do you get people to take action on this very serious thing?
But isn't this why we have SBC?
No.
Okay, explain that. Explain that.
SBC is they're our organizer. Yeah, exactly. They follow our orders. We need to give them orders, and we're not. You know, I feel like the governing partners need to, and not just the governing partners. Part of the discussion about money. Like, how do we, if we can't get our charter members to commit more than a signature on a piece of paper?
I appreciate that. I would also like to remind everybody that this is an alliance.
Thank you.
We can't dictate what anybody does. We can set goals. But we have no laws or mandates to enforce. We have information to share. We have ways to support people to accommodate existing laws and mandates. We have paths for them to take that will make their journey easier. But Krista is correct. You get out of it what you give. We will set another strategic planning session, but right now we're still working on completing the tasks in the last strategic plan session that Director Rolfe participated in, and I thank you for that participation. I look forward to Greg's participation in the next one. And please bring your ideas and your creativity and your action and your strategic focus, because we need this. And all agencies need this help. So that was the point of the governing partners, is that we were going to be the leaders in this, and we were going to show people the way. And that's what we've done with, like, the clearinghouse. We were all the first to bring our policies and programs forward and get those formalized and get them posted so that we could lead the way. And there are endless other ways that we can do that. I understand the challenge with feeling like we're unfocused, because this is such a complex issue to solve. And there's no single path. Every agency is going to have to take a different path. And so it is a little bit unfocused, because we're trying to open up opportunities rather than say, this is how you have to do it. We're going to say, these are your options. This is the menu you can choose from. And again, I'll just reiterate, we can't force anybody to do anything. So setting a specific goal is not something we're going to do as the CTA. We're not going to say, we're going to reduce 150 metric tons in 1 year by our partner agencies because we're not in control of them. But we can help them accomplish their own goals, which they will get. They will have those goals set from their greenhouse gas emission inventories and their recommendations.
Thank you. Anything more from the board on this topic? All right, we'll close it. Thanks very much for your input. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right, item 10, board committee assignments, ad hoc committee reports.
I think the first one is our housing JPA. Lauren, I know you've been out. I don't know if you had anything additional beyond, I think we just have a link in there for this time.
Yeah.
We're going through a strategic planning session. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob attended on my behalf the strategic planning session. So Rob, I don't know if you have any highlights from that or.
No, I think we're waiting for the summary to come out, and then probably next month we'll have that from Heidi and be able to share that. River Revitalization Committee.
Yep, a little bit of a slower month. Last night, Town Council had received a presentation from the River Revitalization Steering Committee, an update, the output from the original town request of creating the R2SC was an action plan. It's called the Playbook, Restore, Revive, Reimagine. So it was seeking guidance from Town Council. I was unable to attend, so I don't have the outputs of what was discussed last night. Also, discussions was not decided last night, but I believe the conversation taking place now is now that that playbook is established and there are 3 catalyst sites that have been approved by Town Council, that the R2SC will meet on an as-required basis to try to hold the town as well as the catalyst business owners accountable of shared responsibility and accountability going forward. So I think they'll will transition to an as-needed basis to watch those 3 catalyst projects.
Okay. And Climate Transformation Alliance report. Is there anything that we did not just cover?
Nothing further to add from me.
Okay. And then act attendance by board directors for July?
Right now, as far as attendance, I think we're going to have to shift the calendar a little bit for July and August plan. We're working on a new hire in the AvCom department that is focused on noise and annoyance. We don't have that person. Last time we talked about this, set this agenda item, we had somebody in that role. We don't now. We're working to backfill that position. In that process, I think my recommendation is right now to cancel the July meeting and push into August, and maybe not on that current day that it's scheduled, because that overlaps with a planned concert in the regional park here, just off the end of the runway. But we can find another day in August if we get this hire done by that time frame. Our intent was to have the next meeting, ACT meeting, in the community as the part 2 of our previous meeting we had in here talking about impact of noise. So I think right now, if we can cancel July and then come back and talk again about when the August meeting will be, and we can find a right day in August that would be not when several other things are going on at the same time.
That would be like a Friday night or Sunday, Monday morning.
Yeah,
Sunday
evening kind of time frame, then that people could actually attend, right?
Right.
Yes, yeah, we've got plenty of daylight, so I think those kind of evening things work well in the summertime. And then the last one on there, the TNT, there's a whole list of great activities around transportation that is happening in the region right now. They have their own email distribution list. We're going to put out some of that with our own distribution email coming out here in July. But there's a number of rideshare, free rides, transportation arrangements that are special around 4th of July or other peak period activities like Truckee Thursdays. Whole host of things that are happening in this region around mass transit and shared transportation. So we'll link to those in our own information when we put it out. But probably too numerous to list right here in this update. we'll get those out to the community.
Okay, any clarifying questions from anyone on the board? Any public comment? All right, thank you. General Manager's report, item 11.
I don't have anything additional to add to my report unless there's questions, but I did want to get, there is a draft workshop agenda for the July 11th strategic plan workshop with Agnew Beck, Shauna. That is in your board packet. She asked if there was any feedback at this stage for this draft agenda. She would love to be able to incorporate your feedback now into the actual agenda for July 11th. So if you have a chance to look at that and digest that, and any feedback you have today collectively as a board, we'll make sure Shauna gets that so she can fine tune and tailor the July 11th workshop to your direction.
Okay. Any clarifying questions from the board? Mary?
I was just curious, I thought we talked about not doing it with Agnew Beck, but just on our own, but maybe I was confused.
I think we did talk about having.
It was for the last one, the May one.
Okay.
We did talk about, I recall the same conversation, maybe Mary, and I think that was on the table early on, and we went into the first workshop with Agnew Beck. We did the second workshop on our own. We held the date for July 11th meeting with Agnew Beck, and I think that was pending further conversations between the board president and myself with our consultant. We've been going through those conversations, and this is the product that's coming out of that. It's a little different than maybe originally envisioned, but it's designed to meet the objectives of what we keep hearing from the board or what's still missing from the strategic plan process.
So is this where we would see the strategic plan as what we worked down in May, and then with the annual?
This would not be. I would plan on the July meeting bringing back the strategic plan feedback that we worked on last time internally. Okay. The subject matter of this workshop at Agnew Beck is probably around more board development, and maybe I'll turn it back over to the board president that's been talking with Shauna also.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the panel discussion, I would suggest a special district. There is not one on there. California Special District. And TRPA's board is appointed. So if we only have 3, that would be my suggestion. Get a different PUD or even school district, whatever, some other special district, because we all operate differently.
Or CSDA was the first comment, the California Special District Association, someone from that organization?
It doesn't have to be from there, just
okay.
Another special district.
Right. Okay.
Like a PUD or a
School
fire
district, I don't really care, but TRPA is appointed, they're not elected.
So is the planning agency, right?
That's TRPA. That's what
I'm
she just
sorry.
said.
Yeah.
So.
That's a lake term, TRPA.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm in Truckee.
I know. Established.
I'm just, in your mind, is there a special district that is highly effective that you would want to pull from?
I mean, that depends on their constituents at the moment. I would personally like to see one with a budget as big as ours or bigger, with staff similar to ours, something that we can relate to. TRPA is, it's all appointed, it's not elected. It's a bi-state federal agency. Town of Truckee is elected, but they don't have the same rules as us. Placer County is higher up than us. I'm not saying they're not effective.
So the point of this was just the governance of a public board. So it wasn't necessarily how a special district operates as much as it was a variety of different types of positions and how they would, like for example, in Placer County, we've invited Cindy Gustafson to come and speak, and then Jen Calloway from Town of Truckee, and then I can't remember the man's name from TRPA who was invited for this.
Well, out of 4th, that's just my suggestion, because the CSDA rules are different.
No, that's great. We can work with Shauna and see if we can identify somebody from a special district that might help round out that list. Joss had some ideas too, so yeah.
Okay.
Any other feedback on the workshop for July 11th and the rough outline?
So will we be getting a board assessment, an internal form or something from Ag New Beck that we're supposed to assess ourselves and assess the board here within a few
Yes,
days?
Shauna would be distributing that over the next week before the July 4th holiday, probably, for you to work on over the holiday and be ready for the July 11th workshop.
Okay. Greg, anything more from you on that item?
Nothing for me on that.
Okay. Can we get an update on the A2 reconstruction?
Sure. If you haven't had a chance to look out behind us here at the terminal on the ramp, it's on schedule currently. I put the rough schematic of the milestones in my report. We are cooking along. Contractor's doing a great job. Our ops team is great working with them. We are juggling around the ramps on the east and west and either side of the construction area. That's working good. They just finished relaying the conduit, the electrical conduit that's out there. You may see they're pouring a little concrete today and some conduit in the ground that was a little too shallow in the past, and they put it down to a proper level, keep it out of the way of future impacts of activities. Vince, any updates on this project you want to add?
No, just reinforce that across that wide schedule, we are on track. There will be some adjustments, but so far we anticipate closing on time.
Which is September 11th?
Yes, it's we're looking really the 14th of September, I think, is probably the closeout date. 11th, yeah, you got 11th down there.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, any board questions on that, or we're good on that?
Good.
Okay.
Then over to legal updates, unless there's other questions on GM report.
Thanks, Rob. So written reports in the packet. I won't kind of go through in detail the two cases that are listed, but I just wanted to kind of provide the highlights and then happy to answer any questions. The first, this is a California Supreme Court case. I think the takeaway here is that liability waivers by themselves are not a silver bullet, right? And so in certain situations, we may have a statutory obligation to do something, and if we don't do that and somebody gets hurt, even if they sign a liability waiver, we can still be responsible. This does not mean that liability waivers are not an important tool. They absolutely are. I think it's just a reminder that by themselves are not a risk management, risk mitigation strategy, right? It's still important that if we're aware of issues, we're addressing them and that we have insurance, because inevitably things happen. The second case is a Ninth Circuit case. This is the latest episode of a story the courts are starting to kind of tell related to the First Amendment, and when public officials' social media becomes subject to the First Amendment. That has really important implications, because once your social media account is subject to those free speech requirements, it affects your ability to delete comments, block people who are, abusive or otherwise, and really regulates what you can post and what you can prevent others from posting on your channels. The way the courts are generally looking at this is, if your social media is functioning like the airport's social media, it's probably subject to the First Amendment. By contrast, if it's your private social media, even if you're posting your opinions about what's going on with the airport, it's likely your private social media and isn't subject to the First Amendment. I think the most important takeaway is at the very bottom of the report, under the tips that that are included, and it's that third one. And it sounds kind of silly, but one of the things the courts have recognized is when someone looks at the social media, does it look like an airport account or does it look like a private account? And so what we recommend is make it really explicit. Put something on there that says this page is my personal page and it's not an official page of the airport. That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this?
Do we get waivers signed at all? I mean, is that a typical thing that is done here? I was kind of drawing a blank there.
Like at the air show?
Yeah.
Feel free to add, Josh. When we engage a number of the on-airfield activities that take place here, we require them to have waivers for their activities and their customers. In general, there aren't waivers that we have as an airport district that we're asking people, the public, to sign to be here. It's just not something we do or appropriate.
Okay.
Greg, do you have any questions on Josh's presentation?
No, I just got to restructure my whole social media presence though when I get back home.
Okay, Teresa. I have some questions. And this is mainly for Greg's benefit, because I know we had this conversation before. When we speak in terms of the district's liability, we are speaking of the 5 of us, and then the board, and then the district indemnifying us, or
Yeah, so when I refer to the district's liability in this context, I refer to the district as an entity, not you as individuals.
okay. But when we're talking about on the liability waivers, that when the district is sued, we can be sued individually as well.
You can be, but that's generally not what happens in those situations. It's the entity that's sued. If for some reason you were sued individually in a case where someone, slipped and fell on something and they filed that lawsuit and for some reason they added you, under the government code, the district generally has an obligation to indemnify you. In addition, you would be covered by our insurance.
Okay. Got it. And then on the social media thing, has the law ruled on social media platforms, Facebook especially, there are lots of obscene comments from fake or AI accounts that are suggestive, sexual in nature, and presumably on a government account. Are you saying that we would not be able to delete comments like that?
We may not be able to. So one of the things the First Amendment, just as an example, it protects profanity. It does not protect obscenity. And even things that are sexually suggestive may not qualify as obscenity and oftentimes do not. So it's relatively a very high bar for something to be completely outside of the protections of the First Amendment.
Okay, and so if it's a spam post to a link to go to some website to buy something,
there can be tools in those cases to remove those posts, but they're generally not, we don't like it or we don't want to put it there. It's more, it's not within the scope of what's being discussed under the government's post. And I think that really kind of highlights the importance of this case is once it becomes a government social media channel, it's subject to a whole bunch of other rules that you don't ever want your personal social media to be subject to. And that's why best practice is make it very clear it's a personal account.
And so I'm assuming that there is an option when you make a post to have comments turned off. I'm assuming that is not legal.
It can be. So as an example, we can run into potential First Amendment issues is if we allow comments, we get comments. Yeah, this relates to a government social media channel, not a private one. If there's a government social media channel and we post something and we get a whole bunch of comments we don't like and we start deleting them and then we remove them and then we turn them off, that's the type of thing that someone could challenge us on. And I'm not saying that we would necessarily lose in that case, but those are the types of things that courts will look at.
But would it be like, for example, on a director page, if it was posted with comments off from the beginning?
That's why it's really important to make sure that your social media doesn't become subject to these requirements. And if you follow the rules, the tips that that are included in the report, you don't need to worry about that, and you can turn comments off. You can delete comments. It's a personal account, not subject to the First Amendment.
Okay. Greg, did you had something on there? You're good.
No, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay, great. The Aviation Community Services report.
Yes, sir. Just 2 items I'd like to highlight. First is we had the Maker Show. Really successful, 2,200 people. They raised $75,000.
This year we added a flight lab experience. We did it kind of late in the game. I think there's lots of opportunities in the future just regarding the conversation about the air show and tickets, et cetera. They had 2,200 people. They raised $72,000 just something to think about. I'm not advocating for anything.
I liked it.
It was a lot of fun.
And I like that idea, you know?
Yep. And then secondly, I'd like to point out, and Larry is still here, our air traffic control tower just got 3 major awards from Midwest ATC. They were the Facility of the Year, which is the entire air traffic control team. Larry was the Air Traffic Control Manager of the Year for their company. And Todd, one of our senior controllers, was the Controller of the Year. So 3 huge awards from Midwest ATC. So thank you, Larry.
Nice
job, Larry.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Jeff?
Just in terms of the student pilot touch and go training, 16 comments. Was this student not asked to mix it up and do?
No,
different
that
ones?
is a total of 16, not one student.
Not
So there
one
were 16 comments regarding touch and goes writ large.
Different students.
There were different students, different days. I don't know that they were all students. We said that because a couple of them clearly were, but repeated touch and goes. There were no egregious, like last year where we had 29 touch and goes in a row. There was nothing like that.
Okay. And, you know, this community outreach and just that idea of trying to get somebody from Hiller to come up and talk to us and talk to the STEAM people, or sending our people down to go see it. I think there's a lot of value in a community outreach education component. I think that could be very valuable at some point. And it's exciting that other airports are coming to look to us for what we're doing with noise abatement. And I'm appreciative of reaching out to Marta's Camp, that you spoke with them or met there. I assume that was you, Rob, or, you know, talking to people.
It was David Van Quest, and we also invited someone from our O&M team that's out in the flight line, kind of, you know, one for the people at Marta's Camp to meet kind of one of our line employees, at the same time someone that's working on the line to go out and, you know, help represent the community. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? Okay, for the last time.
Yeah, before we ask Finance and Accounting, I just want to recognize this is Kelly's 6th year of being with us, and this will be her last Board of Directors meeting, and we want to thank her so much for her time with the district and wish her all the best in her onward travels. And thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you. Just a quick last update on the May financials. Overall revenue, 11.9 million to a budget of 13, so down $1 million. Some of that, or majority of that, is from property tax. So we are now receiving and budgeting that we're going to get our property tax dollars January, June, but the Placer County and Nevada have a lot more that trickles in throughout the rest of the year, so that number should true up, if not go over what was budgeted. Total expenses 4.8 to a budget of 6.4, and net income of 5.9 to a budget of 5.5. So we're up 400,000 so far year to date. Now that the audit's done, we'll start working on the annual report with Mike, who just left, next week. Still waiting on the insurance hangar damage claim money. I really hope it shows up. Working hard on that.
We'll let you know how that turns out.
I know, right? I really hope they bring a giant check. That would be great. And then we're still working with NetSuite to pull in the old Cassell data into the data warehouse. And Heather Baraga, who's our new senior accountant, came in on Monday, and she's going to come in and shadow with payroll and billing for the January or the July cycle on Monday and Tuesday, and she will officially be here on the 7th. Any questions?
Any questions for Kelly?
Just on the statement of revenues and expenses, the interest of the revenue, it, you know, I assume that's the CDs and
Cal class, yeah, the interest
and
percentages dropped
significant variance.
considerably.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went down way more than we budgeted, unfortunately.
So, but that was with Cal class, not the
Yeah.
CDs.
Well, everything is, the CDs are fixed, but it's the LAIF and Cal class.
Oh, okay. Are we pulling money then out of the Cal class to put back into CDs then, or?
No, we're just letting it ride currently.
It'll even out. Look at your 401k. It's tariffs, trashed.
Tariffs.
S&P's back. Right? I mean, that's what happened in the bond market.
We'll continue to actively manage that with those existing relationships with Life and Cal Class. They have, both those options have options within them that are very safe and secure still, but do provide good returns for security it provides.
Nothing from Teresa. Kat, anything from you? Greg, anything from you for Kelly?
Nothing from me. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks.
Yeah, nothing for me other than just thank you. And thanks you for the time that you spent with Greg and I last week to go over.
That was my other thing I was going to mention. We did our internal audit chit chat, Greg and David and I, and went through a whole lot of great stuff. There's a report in the right there. We talked through credit card processing, how to give one to a new person, what it requires of the employee, what do they do, what do they have to sign for. We talked about Cal Class and LAIF, talked about the CDs and the process of investments. And I believe the next step will be to do another one of these once the new me is here, and then kind of go through the next process.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Kelly. Do we have any public comment on the reports? Seeing none, future agenda priorities, meeting management, item 12.
The main takeaway, I think, is trying to pull together the various aspects of a plan with some detail around it for an air show for 2026 for July's board meeting.
And I have that request for, in natural resources, including something in the strat plan with more specificity for greenhouse gas and carbon. And I'm wondering if there's consensus when you come back to us. That's me requesting it, so I want to see if there's.
Start again.
I would say I think we built some of that in based on our last meeting, and so I think you'll see some of that in our next when I present it back to the board in July. If it's not what you're looking for exactly, then we certainly can modify it further.
Okay.
I would, especially on the air show front, I would absolutely support, as part of the STEAM education there, the impact of greenhouse gas.
Yeah.
I think it's, and especially specifically to that event, I think that's absolutely worthwhile and absolutely in line with our mission statement. Any board comment, questions on that?
Nope.
No? Any public comment on that? No? Any staff or board member conference attendance reports?
Nothing from staff.
Nobody went? Okay, no. And then any board member announcements?
Nope.
Yeah, right. Our next special meeting is July 11th at 1 p.m. We will be discussing our strategic plan. And our next regular board meeting, July 23rd at 4:30 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Director Horvath,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned 7:06.
And Brian Stevens, I did get a carrot cake to send Kelly off with.